We're supposed to stop him whenever we don't think it's good, or?
You can
just sit here and just say nothing.
Yeah, you can raise your hand. You can ask questions. So.
I feel like my second grade kids are like, what? Like, teacher, what?
Your voice will show up. I'm going to post this on YouTube, so you're free to ask questions, but your voice will show up on YouTube. But
okay.
You won't be pictured, so
that's okay.
Whatever.
Before you start that, do you want to tell us, before you actually launch into it, anything about it, or are you just going to launch into it?
I think I'll just explain into it. So I want to do something on fear of abandonment, because I haven't dated much in the last 3 years, and I've been 12-stepping for my various addictions: sex addiction, love addiction, codependent relationships, living in fantasy, all these addictions that I've been 12-stepping for. And so I've also been broke, basically, since 2007. So that's kind of really restricted my dating life. But there was this girl who found one of my videos online, and she Facebooked me, and so we started chatting. And then we started chatting more and more, and so we started chatting every day and talking on the phone, and things were getting hot and heavy. And we were making plans for her to come see me in LA.
Where does she live?
And so she doesn't live in LA. She doesn't live in California.
Where does she live?
She lives on the East Coast. Marcus, coming in. So schools here, whatever. So I'm just getting started. And so she's Jewish, and so I was really excited about this. And this is kind of embarrassing, but I started telling her I love you. I've never met her in person. You know, we're just like talking on the phone every day. It's like, you know, this is like my soulmate. We share so much in common, blah, blah, blah. And then over Passover, she just goes silent on me. She just doesn't answer my texts, doesn't answer my Facebook messages, doesn't answer my calls, just nothing but silence for 8 days. And by the second day, I was freaking out. I was just like, what did I do wrong? Surely I did something wrong. And so I've always known that I had fear of abandonment, but I never bothered to actually Google it. I never actually knew what fear of abandonment was. And so this time I said, okay, I know I've got fear of abandonment. Now I'm 46 years old. I've never been married. I've never had a relationship longer than a year. I'm going to Google this and figure out what it is. And so I Googled fear of abandonment, and it means emotional overreaction to somebody important to you backing away, or your perception that they're backing away. So I just read for hours on fear of abandonment. And it said that it's not like cancer in the sense that you can cut it out. It's more like diabetes in the sense you have to manage it. And there's not really any cure, and there aren't really tools. Really, all you can do is shed a lot of tears. You can make amends for the crazy way you've acted when you've had fear of abandonment, because when your fear of abandonment kicks in, you'll tend to make irrational decisions. You'll tend to go crazy. You'll tend to be like you're drunk.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So what if there's no coping mechanisms?
There are coping mechanisms, but there's no solution.
But there is a coping. Of course, no solution, but there are ways to cope, correct?
Right. So the more you have going on in your life, the better. So the more responsibilities you have, the better. The more pursuits that you have in your life, the better. If you have a job, it's far better than not having a job, because you're not going to obsess because you've got to do your job. If you're going to school, that's better. The more of a support system you have, the better. The more self-esteem you have, the better. Come on in. And there are drinks in the kitchen, in the refrigerator, if anyone's looking. So, so the more severe your fear of abandonment will be inverse proportion to your sense of self. In other words, self-esteem. I've heard the term self-esteem so often. Marcus, there's a camera right there, so you can do what you like, but just be aware of that.
Say hi to the camera. What should I see?
Wherever you want. Grab the stool there, or sit there.
Sit here. Thank you for it.
So self-esteem doesn't mean anything to me, because I've heard that phrase so much. It means nothing to me. I translate it as leading an esteemable life.
But
Yeah.
your reaction to the perception that somebody is pulling away
Yeah.
probably forces the person to pull away some more because
Yes.
they realize you're trying to
Yeah.
glom onto them and they don't
Yeah.
want that.
Yeah.
So isn't simply knowledge of that sufficient that it helps you keep it in check when it happens? Because you realize that by reacting in that way, you're ruining your...
Okay, so I'm able to not react usually, and so I didn't react to this woman. I didn't react for 7 days. I was dying to react in some way, aside from why are you cutting me out in my Facebook messages.
Okay, well,
I was dying to react.
But you are reacting because in your mind you're going through
I'm
everything. You just
emotionally
aren't-
reacting. I'm going crazy. I'm not just doing anything to her. But what I finally did, and got a lot of relief from it, is I blocked her on Facebook. Because she was like updating her Facebook. And I'm checking that, so she's very, very alive, very functioning. She's just cutting me out.
So you became more like obsessed with her because she was cutting you out. So you literally were like cyber stalking her.
Yeah.
Facebook stalking her in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because you couldn't
Yeah.
because obviously she's still, it's not like she's not checking her messages.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
okay, I understand.
Right, and so as a love addict, I'm going to become, trying to use love to fix what's wrong with me. Like, so I tend to obsess over the object of my affection. And so I tend to declare my affections like inappropriately, too soon, too strongly, frightening people by the strong, I love you, I love you. I frighten people because I'm trying to use that to fix me. Like people with fear of abandonment try to use relationships to fix them. And so that's what I do, and it doesn't work because you just take your crazy dance into the relationship and make it nuts. So I blocked her on Facebook, and that brought her a sense of relief because I couldn't see her anymore, and I was able to do something. So that kind of reduced my anxiety somewhat. But still, even if I don't react at all, I'm still drunk. I'm still obsessed. I'll give you another example. About 2 years ago, I met this Jewish woman at a Shabbat dinner, and we hit it off. We became friends on Facebook. She invited me to her birthday party. I went to her birthday party. On the next day, I asked her to dinner. On a Sunday, I asked her to dinner. On Thursday night, she agreed, and then I followed up with a place and a time, and she didn't respond. So I was fine for 24 hours. But after 24 hours, my anxiety and fear of abandonment had kicked in, and it would only kick in if I'm really interested in the girl. Like it's not going to kick in if I'm just nah. And so when I was at school training to be an Alexander Technique teacher, and my work was suffering, like for the first time I wasn't able to finish a lesson with my teacher. Like I begged out of it after about 10 minutes. The first time and only time that ever happened in my 3 years of training, because I really wanted every minute that I could possibly get with my teachers. And so I was afraid to keep following up with this girl because I tend to get into relationships where I'm pursuing. As a love addict, I tend to get in relationships with people who emotionally avoid me. I tend to get into relationships with doctors, lawyers, very powerful women, executives, professors, because I have the fantasy that they will fix me. And
They fix you all right.
yeah. And so...
But men are supposed to chase the women. It's the women who aren't supposed to chase the men.
Right, but there's one thing when you're chasing from strength, and there's another thing when you're chasing from neediness. And I'm chasing from neediness. And so initially they get a charge because, like, here's someone they can fix. And they also get a charge because I shore up their fragile sense of self-esteem because they've got someone they can feel contempt for. So they feel great about themselves in comparison to me because I'm so messed up. So I chase them. Initially that's exciting to them. And then it quickly becomes unexciting to them and becomes pathetic. So they distance. Then if I pull myself together and stop chasing them, they'll come back looking for me. But anyway, it's a bad cycle for about never goes longer than a year. My relationships, if I'm really into the girl, we tend to break up half a dozen times in the course of the year. Like, they're really intense, and we break up. And I'll also put up with more than most ordinary people will, because my fear of abandonment is so severe, I will go through hell to try to stay attached. So I had a girlfriend a few years ago who would go off and have sex with one of her female friends and tell me about it. And I would
Is
just
that Sarah?
I'm not going to use any names.
Okay. Sorry.
But I would be absolutely broken up that she'd done this. It felt horrible to me, but I so didn't want to lose her that after being really angry at her for a month or so, we'd get back together. And so, yeah, we broke up like half a dozen times in the course of a year. And that's typical for my relationships where I'm crazy about the woman. So one way that I've tried to deal with my fear of abandonment is by dating women who are below me.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
What does it mean for you to be in love? And do you think that it's possible to have unrequited love, or does love have to be reciprocal? Because I'm wondering how that fits into when you say you really love somebody, you're really into this woman, and how you feel the response is, and if that's an important point to you.
So starting in about second grade, I had this yearning to attach to a girl, to a woman, that would make.
I love the
everything
fact that you're
okay.
talking about the women you're dating now as girls, and the second grader as a woman. I love that.
Well, so do you think that's back to you not really having a mother?
Yeah, because in my first 4
yeah.
years of my life, my mother was dying, so I was staying in a dozen, 2 dozen different homes. So that's where my fear of abandonment comes from. But knowing that doesn't really make any difference in dealing with it. It doesn't make it any less
Well, I'm
severe.
trying to understand
Yeah.
the interrelationship between the way that you act in this and what you're looking for, and what you understand love to be, and what you actually would expect out of a loving relationship in terms of whether it's mutual, whether it's unrequited, what the degree of understanding and empathy, or what you
understanding,
expect.
support, empathy, sex. Those.
Well, do you think it has to be, because you're talking in this case where you're pursuing somebody, you're talking about it, which strikes me as unrequited. They don't really necessarily reciprocate, and they're pushed away by the fact that you come on the way. Do you think that really is that you're being in love with them, or is that, in your view, sort of you're projecting something on it that's other than love?
Well, I think all love as infatuation is you're projecting onto a person. I think that's universal. But I've had, let's say, relationships where I go a year with someone I'm crazy about. Okay, she's also crazy about me in her own way. We're both crazy. As someone, I'm an addict. I basically only date fellow addicts. And so they have their issues for them. My last girlfriend asked me, I fall for girls named Lisa. That's my weakness. And Lisa asked me a few years ago, why do you go for women who are emotionally unavailable? And I didn't have an answer then. I didn't know why I keep falling for women who are emotionally unavailable. But we all tend to fall in love with our parent with whom we have the most troubled relationship. So I have the most troubled relationship with my father. And my father is emotionally avoidant, emotionally withdrawn, unable to be emotionally present. And so that's what I pursue. That's what I fall in love with, because I hope to fix, my wound from childhood by pursuing these emotionally unavailable women. And I go for girls named Lisa. I go for girls who are born Jewish. I'm a convert to Judaism. I go for girls who are successful. I'm a blogger. I go for women who have nice apartments and drive fast cars. I've usually driven bombs and lived in hovels. I go for women who are very busy. They've got a really busy social life. That's so impressive to me. I love a woman who is just socially astute and can just mix with all sorts of people. It just intoxicates me. She's always going to bar mitzvahs and christenings and weddings, and she's active in charities, and she's got an important position, and she wears power outfits. I love power outfits. I love high heels, and that Ally McBeal, legal beagle outfits. I just love that. Just anything that screams power. And these powerful women, they love to be dominated in the bedroom. And I'm struggling with the rest of my life, so I dominate them in the bedroom. That's one area where I can feel like a man, and they like being dominated, so on the face of it, that should work, but we're creating intensity in our love life rather than real intimacy, and it doesn't work out.
Why do you think that is? They like being dominated?
Oh, because they're in charge in the rest of their life. They're running things. In the case of the doctor, they have people's lives in their hand. Other people, they're running a company, and so they got employees who depend upon them. They're scheduling things where people are dependent upon them. So they've got all this responsibility. They love getting together with me, and for me to treat them like a whore, because then they don't have any responsibility. Like, they like to just be used, like a dish rag. That's the type of women that I date. Like, I remember this one girl, I was getting with her, and she starts like screaming, "Fuck me like a whore." That's what she wanted. She was like a very successful woman, but she wanted, I'd never heard that before. And it was like the greatest thing I've ever heard in my life. But yeah, that's the dynamic that I get into. So here I have this really profound thing to say.
Are you reading like cue cards kind of?
I just wanted to read one thing. So I had my wallet stolen last week, and the next day, as I was trying to go to sleep, I was still upset about it, and so I got up and I wrote in my journal. So this is what I wrote. I just feel so sad and pathetic about having my wallet stolen. Why do I keep returning to this pathetic state? Why is that my default emotional state when something goes wrong? It's because I want to be rescued. When I came down with chronic fatigue syndrome, I wanted to be rescued. I remember in the weeks before I just totally collapsed in 1988 into basically 6 bedridden years with chronic fatigue syndrome. I remember in the weeks before that I was taking 24 units of college and I was working full-time. It was just crazy, crazy, crazy. I remember, so I was like driving myself through all my responsibilities. I kept saying, I'm either going to break through or I'm going to break down. Either way, I'll get love. And that was just like going through my head. And then I just collapsed.
That was explicitly going through your head?
That was explicitly going through my head. I'm going to break through to becoming a successful person who's able to get a goal. I still hadn't had a real intimate relationship at this point. I was 22. Oh, 21, going on 22. Yeah, that was going through my head.
But you said, or either way, I'll get love?
Either way, I'll get love.
Oh, man.
That was going through my... Because I was like working really hard. I was getting straight A's at college for the first time in my life. And I was finally getting serious. I saw what I wanted to do. I wanted to become an economist. I had been accepted into UCLA. I was finishing off my time at a community college. And so I had like focus and all that. And on the face of it, my life was successful because I was earning money and getting great grades. But that needy child that I want to deny, or that needy person, is just like crying out for something. And I didn't understand what was happening, but that's what was going through my head. So I wrote in my journal last week, I'm seeking as an adult the nurturing I did not get as a small child. I wonder if there aren't healthier ways for me to seek out this nurturing rather than being pathetic. I just want to collapse and return to a fetal state. So whenever anything goes wrong, I just want to collapse. Like if my internet goes down for like longer than 15 minutes, if my car breaks down, if I lose a job, if like there's some desperate situation with my finances, if I get thrown out of my synagogue, if like these all feel the same to me. Like the experience is like a mini panic attack. Like I've never had a full-on panic attack so that I couldn't go on and do what I needed to do in my life. Like I've never had a panic attack so that I couldn't go to work or I couldn't go meet my responsibilities. But it's like I'm flooded, I'm flushed, I'm tight, I'm compressed, and the world just narrows. Like everything just narrows to me so that I either want to fight somehow or I just want to flee and just curl up. And that's like my default reaction to anything going wrong. And it's like my emotional age is about 4 years old. Right? When something goes wrong, I just keep always retreating to that 4-year-old state. So when someone important to me starts backing away, I typically react by wanting to cut them out of my life, which only increases my isolation and abandonment. I'm bringing about the thing.
But I thought that
most.
gave you empowerment when you cut off this girl on Facebook.
It does give me a feeling of power to cut someone out, but the end result of this usually is more isolation and more abandonment for myself. I remember my first love, my first girlfriend, summer of 1982. I was 16, and she told me she was going to a concert with a college guy, and I got so hurt that I just cut her out. And she wrote me a letter about how hurt she was, and I felt powerful that I got that letter, but I just cut her out. That's been my primary reaction. Another reaction that I have is trying to make myself perfect so that the other person will come back to me. Another reaction that I've had is to snoop. I remember once my girlfriend used my computer to check an email. She'd broken up with her fiancé several years before, but they were still in constant touch. And so she talked about getting an email from him. So I went, she didn't log out of my computer. And so I went there and I looked at the email that he'd sent her. And it's just like very familiar language but I've had that instinct. I remember when I lived with this woman, and we were just going through tough times. She was going away for a weekend seminar, and she said, you're free to look at everything. Because she knew I just wanted to snoop. Because I felt so insecure in the relationship that I just wanted to go through everything. That's a huge drive, very typical for people with fear of abandonment. From what I've read, most people have fear of abandonment. The degree is going to be inversely proportionate to your sense of self. So to how solid a life that you have.
This is a question.
Yeah.
Are you interested in abandoning your fear of abandonment?
Am I interested in abandoning my fear of abandonment?
Well, you weren't here when you said there's no cure for it. You just have to learn to cope.
Well, that's an opinion.
Well, that was what he
I
said.
know, I was, yeah. It's just one opinion.
Okay, so one opinion that I read.
Well, wouldn't the solution be to increase your sense of self?
The solution is to increase your sense of self. And the more esteemable life you lead, the less vulnerable you're going to be to fear of abandonment.
I think so.
But it's easier to just be pathetic.
Right. I mean, in his books, Howard Halperin, this psychologist, writes about fear of abandonment, and he talks about many strategies to overcome it.
Yeah, so I'm sure there are different opinions. I don't...
Well, what I was asking is it just it's become a comfortable place for you to be in and to talk about and to blog about and post about?
No, it's a horrible place, and
It's horrible, but it's a familiar
it's familiar.
It's a
It's
familiar
familiar.
comfort.
It's a familiar place.
And it's actually less horrible than facing it.
That's that's a great challenge. So most people have it from what I've read. The most common reaction is to cut people off. What also happens is you tend to abandon yourself. And so as this fear of abandonment kicks in, you tend to abandon yourself by putting up with abusive friendships and relationships and work relationships. You tend to abandon yourself by cutting people out of your life when you perceive them backing away from you. You tend to abandon yourself by not taking care of yourself, either with the medical care you need or the psychological care you need, by not addressing your addictions. So, you tend to collapse unless you deal with this. It doesn't go away as you get older for most people. And so the answers are, trying to build up an esteemable life and an honorable life where you're service to other people. And for me, I've been 12-stepping for a couple of years, and that's helped me kind of get a handle on some of my emotional addictions. But boom, just a couple of weeks ago, a few weeks ago, or a month ago, the fear of abandonment kicked in really strong, maybe as strong as ever, and just like absolutely washed over me.
Well, I'm trying to understand, is this because it seems to me there's an element of trust here, basically, because this person had been responding positively to you, this sort of, you felt blindsided when this happened.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, I mean, in a certain sense, that's different than a normal sort of somebody just drawing away. This is a situation where there were no indications she was drawing away, and in fact, one could easily make the case that because it was a long-distance electronic relationship, that she was leading you on, and so in that sense, it's easy to see yourself as a victim, somebody who could be perceived as just being manipulative or playing a game, too, which is different than, what you're talking about.
Yeah, I definitely don't see myself as a victim. I don't see victims in these sort of relationships. What it does, though, is it opens a mirror to who I am. Like, that needy, insecure, childlike, 4-year-old, emotionally mature, isolated guy is revealed by what happened.
But if it hadn't been a complete cutoff, but let's say that she called you and said, look, you're really coming on too strong. I don't feel, that close to you, and as a result, I'd like to chill out on the relationship. Would that have caused, that's something which definitely could cause you to focus on your fear of abandonment,
Yeah.
as opposed to somebody just cutting you off, because it seems to me there are alternate explanations, and you seem to be attributing that reaction on her part to your actions, and I'm saying it may not have been, because it's a very weird thing that somebody would do that over the internet and have that relationship and then just cut you off.
Yeah, I don't mean to attribute her reaction to my reactions. I'm just saying what happened is that it showed a mirror to who I am.
I don't know if it's that weird because, I think women can get really excited about something but all of a sudden be like, oh my god, he just freaked me the fuck out. Do you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
it's like,
Yeah.
I don't think it's that weird because when you told her you loved her and she was like, I love pie. I mean, seriously though, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my god, this guy's kind of crazy. Not that you're crazy, but when women get at first they're all about the attention, but all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is too much. Okay, no, this guy obviously is something wrong with him because he's never met me before, so I'm gonna stop this right now. And that I've seen that happen to a lot of women, where they're just like, we gotta stop.
Well, the other thing is the distance.
And the distance made it easier to cut
Yeah,
as
and
well.
the fact that you weren't in daily contact with her and that sort of thing sometimes is quite a negative. Marriages that break up are long distance ones. They almost always break up. Just the lack of physical distance probably could have triggered something in there. But here's something I'm curious about. Did she unfriend you?
No, she didn't.
Because I find it interesting. She
No.
abandons you, but then she doesn't unfriend you, which is something kind of interesting.
No,
And
I
then
think she did that on purpose, actually, just to kind of show him I'm not answering you. Yeah, she did it on purpose, kind
And
of
she
like
posted all these
him.
pictures and...
But she could have been depressed or something. And
Yeah,
that's why
she had her own
wasn't-
things going on. What struck me, though, is I had the same sort of drunk, obsessive, irrational, over-emotional reactivity to that I have to a whole slew of things. So that was just like the latest instigator, but I had the same reaction when I got thrown out of a synagogue. I had the same reaction when I got thrown out of an acting school. Like when I came to LA, I got thrown out of 4 acting schools in my first 2 years from tussling with the teachers.
Have you tried just looking at it from either a Stoic philosophy or sort of more cognitive behavioral therapy or rational emotive therapy? Look, if somebody expresses displeasure with you, you have 3 ways of looking at it, which is that they are full of shit and they don't know what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
or they're right, but I'm willing to accept the fact that they're right about the way and I don't want to change, or they're right and I want to change. You know, if you try looking at it from that standpoint.
Yeah, and I usually can control my reactions, the things that I do. Like, I can control it, like, and I see that because I can contrast that with some of the crazy things that women have done to me when I broke up the relationship that I would never do, and that no guy I know would ever do. I remember breaking up with one woman in 1993, and she proceeded to write a letter to my parents, you know, just detailing everything that she thought could do them the most pain and cause me the most harm. Like, I would never consider doing that, and no guy I know would ever consider doing that. But that was her reaction. She sought to... Oh, and she wrote Dennis Prager, because she knew I venerated Dennis Prager. So she wrote Dennis Prager, and she called his office and told his office, you know, how badly I had treated her. Another woman I met who was a bit of a star, and we had a one-night stand, and then the next day I met a woman I wanted to have a relationship with. So I tried to cut things off with the older woman, and she just went nuts. She wrote on the internet about what a lousy lover I was. She called me thumper. She, like, you know, she said I hammered away at her like like jackhammering concrete. She, like, went after the girl I started dating, like, saying that she was ugly and that she needed a job, so please help her. She called my rabbi. She just did everything she could to try to destroy my life. And so I have severe fear of abandonment at times, but it would never occur to me to do any of those things. But I can better understand now what these women were doing now that I've researched fear of abandonment, because it's like you become drunk and you become irrational and you just start lashing out. And so I can kind of get it now. And of course I'm attracting that into my life because, you know,
Well, that's why we're all here.
Yeah. Because of my own messed up stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
Once
Yeah.
beer.
Hey, lady, just like totally random, but I just wanted to let you know, since you know Joelle really well, she just had her baby.
Oh, little dog.
Yeah, I thought you should
Little
know.
dog,
Yeah.
little dog.
I thought you should know since you really well.
Awesome. So, Moshe, you're the therapist. Do you have any thoughts?
Sounds like these guys know more than me. What's your background? What do you do?
He's a lawyer.
You're a lawyer.
Sounds like a
Lawyers are
doctor.
very
And
analytical.
somebody who's really fucked up, so... and
You're pretty eloquent for someone
Figure
who's...
it
I'm just curious, where in your life have you acted out of the adult part of yourself and not the abandoned child?
Right. Well, usually my adult self controls my behavior, while the child is in my visceral emotional reactions. So, like when my wallet was stolen, I just wanted to curl up in bed, you know, in a fetal position, and like so I went to my journal and I wrote out what I was feeling, and then I just like went to bed. You know, but I was feeling like a 4-year-old. I was feeling like my 4-year-old who's, you know, being moved around. So I went to work. I've always gone to work. I've never missed a day at work because I was feeling upset. Like, that's inconceivable to me. I've never, like, missed appointments, missed, you know, seeing friends, going to some social event that I wanted to see. So I've never been incapacitated. And there's not, like, any single place in the world that I can't go because I get a panic attack. I had a girlfriend who couldn't go to hospitals because I gave her panic attacks, couldn't go to courtrooms because I gave her panic attacks. Like, I've never had that reaction. I just get like a mini panic attack.
So, lady, my question to you is, what makes you think?
Hey, coming in.
I just wanted to drop this off as a
Oh.
quasi-housewarming gift
Oh, thank you.
and performance gift. I love this man. He is my leader, my inspiration, and he's brought the beard back, which means when it goes, we're going to videotape it. We're going to make it a reality show. Just wanted to give you a hug and give you
Thanks,
this.
Great to see you, man.
I'm so sorry
Happy
I can't see
birthday,
you.
Aaron.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Happy birthday. That's so
Hey,
kind.
good to see you,
Yeah,
Marcus.
good to see
Good
you.
to see you. Great to see you guys. Happy Luke Ford.
Thank you, thank you.
Love you, man. Take care.
Love you, good to see you.
Thanks. Where's the mezuzah?
My roommates aren't Jewish, so...
Oh, okay, well, I've got a mental mezuzah here for
Yeah.
you.
Thank you,
Okay,
thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you. What do you say?
Okay.
What did you say that pushed him away?
No, his birthday's today, so he's probably out. His birthday.
No,
He's abandoning
he's
it.
He's abandoning
Oh,
that.
sorry.
It's too close to him that it's
Oh,
going to be a
yeah.
joke. I'm
Sorry, is it undone? Sorry.
What do you say?
Okay, so my question to you is, what makes you think that you have to be different? In other words, you know that in the workplace that you're going to act out of the adult part of
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah.
Why do you change that when you're in your interpersonal life? Why do you feel like there's husbands, for example,
Right,
that feel
right, yeah.
that in the workplace or whatever, I'm not going to treat my colleagues or my business people the way I go home and treat my wife. So when they walk past the threshold, they think somehow that that's okay.
Yeah.
So in sometimes 10 minutes of therapy, all it is to get the person to realize that just like they act in their business life,
Yeah.
they can adopt.
Yeah.
You can adopt the same way
Yeah.
in your interpersonal life,
Yeah.
and just realize that when you're acting out of your wounded child
Yeah.
or your abandoned child, that you don't have to.
Yeah.
You absolutely don't have to. You can acknowledge that you have, and you can see yourself being triggered. But hey, I do it over there.
Yeah.
I can do it. I can do it over here.
I remember, I'll talk about one relationship with a photographer, Holly Randall, that I had in the fall of 2005. And so things are hot and heavy for the first like 2 months. But then we talked about maybe getting together on Sunday. On Friday, we talked about maybe getting together on Sunday. I call her on Sunday, she doesn't return my call until Monday. Then she IMs me, and I'm ticked off, and I'm going to show her. So I do not answer any of her IMs or phone calls for all week. Then I remember walking home, Motzi Shabbos, complaining to a friend that a week ago I had 3 women in my life. I had amazing sex with Holly, and then I had this intellectual for my intellectual needs, and then I had this very pious Jewish woman for my pious Jewish needs. Everything was great, but now I've got none of them. And I finally break down and talk to Holly, and to my sadness, I realize that we're broken up. And so that means there's no more sex. And so, she takes me to a movie. Holly pays for every date we have. Remember, she was once interviewed, and she said, yeah, it bothers most guys when I pay for the dates, but for some reason it never bothered Luke. And so, she took me to a Harry Potter movie, and she took me to dinner, but there was no sex. I'd entered the friend zone, which, I'd been using sex as a sex addict to, get me by. That was, that was my addiction that helped me to push away this needy inner child. So, looks like we're going to finally get back together on New Year's Eve. Her parents throw a big New Year's Eve party in Malibu. And looks like we're going to spend the night. Looks like everything's going to get back together. So, we're sitting there together 10 seconds before the New Year. And I'm still kind of insecure, so I don't grab her and kiss her. And 5 seconds before the New Year, she jumps up, goes over there, and kisses her ex-boyfriend. Not French kiss, but kisses him. And I get mad, and I go home and I blog about it.
Of course you do.
And so she called me and emailed me the next day, to try to placate me, and I'm so sorry, I realized that was wrong. And so now I feel like I've got the upper hand. And so I proceed to send the most embarrassing email I've ever sent in my whole life. I just start making demands. I just I'm just writing out these demands you keep doing these things and there's got to be a price to pay. So let's say every time you do something like this, you have to donate to a charity of my choosing. It's just the most embarrassing. But that's a really typical reaction to fear of abandonment. When you feel like you've got some power, you just start issuing demands to try to get a sense of safety in the relationship. And thank God she just ignored it. And so we did get to have a few more weeks of fun times. But it was just so embarrassing to even think about it. But that was like that was just one of the craziest, reactions that I've ever had to my fear of abandonment. It's just like issuing demands. So normally I just cut the person out. But yeah, sometimes I've issued demands, sometimes I've snooped. Okay. This has hurt me in the workplace in that I tend to attract bosses who threaten to fire me. And so when a boss threatens to fire me, my fear of abandonment just comes welling up. Like, I am triggered, I am drunk. And so I then every part of me is yearning to cut that person out of my life and say, you can't fire me, I quit. Now, I don't think I've done that, at least not in the last 15, 20 years, but that's an instinct that could really hurt me in my professional life. So it comes up, like when there's like a threat to me at work, I just want to cut the job out of my life. That's like another example of how fear of abandonment.
But obviously you don't do it. So
I
the
don't.
question is that how long after that does that feeling, I should quit, I should get out of here, last? Or is it simply fleeting for the day and by the next day it's forgotten?
It comes up really strong and let's say the boss is yelling at me.
Right.
And he's yelling at me, and I've got this feeling just flowing up. It's like lava just flowing up, and I just want to go right back at him, and I'm so close, but I don't do it. But
Right, but then the next day is it gone, or do you hold that feeling for like a week? Or something?
sometimes it lasts for a day or two,
Okay, but then it's gone, right?
but then it's gone.
Okay. So can't you apply that same sort of reaction in the rest of your life? Then?
Yeah, and I largely do, but I'm still crazy. Like, I'm emotionally crazy. I can limit my behavior.
That's all that you need to do.
Yeah,
That's all you need to do.
yeah,
Because you know for the rest of your life that you'll always have that.
yeah,
But you have the choice whether you're going to act from the adult body self
yeah,
or that abandoned child.
yeah.
And the good thing about it is that the more you practice in your relationships, the better you will become. Just choosing the right person, that may be difficult because you'll tend to want to choose what you're more familiar with.
Yeah, I'm familiar with women who abandon me, who cheat on me.
I'm just curious about what happened with the Schultz, if you want to share with
Yeah,
me.
yeah, sure. It was classic because I was like creating situations where I would get abandoned. I was writing on the pornography industry while I wanted to delve into Orthodox synagogues. And I was becoming famous for it. So I was on TV, I was written about in the LA Times and the New York Times, so I just couldn't keep it quiet or use a fake name. But I was writing a blog on the pornography industry while at the same time I was trying to convert to Orthodox Judaism. And, coming to Orthodox synagogue every day, studying Daf Yomi, going to the prayers, and it freaked people out. Like, it was just like totally incongruous. And so in 1998 at Asia Torah, they gave me the choice. You either stop writing on the pornography industry or stop coming around here. So they gave me a choice. I chose to keep writing on the pornography industry because that was the only way that I could have been able to find where I could earn a living as a writer, writing what I wanted. But that was the only topic that would permit me to earn a living. So I chose to abandon Asia Torah, but I still felt...
You weren't writing pornography.
I was not writing
What were you
pornography.
actually
I was like
writing?
interviewing directors, porn stars, producers, people in law enforcement. I was just like reporting on the
I'm just
industry.
curious why bothered Asia Torah? What did they care whether you wrote on a blog?
Well, it bothered people in the shul.
Oh, bothered people in the
Yeah, and they would bring things I'd written to the rabbi.
What are they doing looking at your porn stuff? That's the thing. Like, if
Well,
you've
the other
not
thing
told
is-
anybody, like, if you've not said anything of what you do, like, when people, like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, if you
I didn't talk about
Good
it, but
question.
So what were people doing on porn sites looking for you? I'm just
It
saying.
sounds in that
They got-
case
they
that
got
that was
enough
their
time.
issue, not yours. I don't see...
Whatever.
If I was a rabbi of a synagogue, and I'm a rabbi, so if I was a rabbi of a synagogue, you want to write and form things, so what does it bother me? You're coming to my class and you're learning some Torah.
Well, you're
That's-
not doing
Yeah, and
the
I
porn,
didn't-
you're writing about
And
it.
even if he was doing the porn, so what? Where's the judgment
But
coming?
if you're converting, you...
Well, Well, Asia Taurus
Oh,
is
because you were
very
converting at that time?
Yeah.
Asia Taurus is also very judgmental in general. Like, becomes a very judgy place to
Right,
go.
so I chose to put myself in that position. Like, I could have just stuck with Reform and Conservative synagogues where this would not have been an issue.
Yeah.
But I
I
chose.
think the issue is because
Didn't Beth
you
still
made
give
it
you a
public.
conversion? No,
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
didn't Beth still give you a conversion?
When I quit writing on the porn industry. Oh, many years after that. I'm sorry, what was that, Marcus?
No, I think the fact that you had a public thing. I mean,
Yeah.
they may lose half of the people if they know what are their business.
Right,
You know,
right.
I mean,
Right.
I mean, the fact that you didn't hide.
Right.
You know, that was the main thing. It's not like an Asia
Right,
Torah thing.
right,
You know, like it's for me it's ridiculous because everybody has issues
Right.
in the synagogue, but they don't make it
Right.
make them public.
Right.
And I think everybody will be just a mental if you are, I don't know, like a porn producer in this case, porn critic, or I don't know. It's like but it's yeah.
I think
very
it's got to
extreme.
do. I think it's
Asian
got.
tour is very extreme, also. You know, like
I'm just
But you know what?
surprised.
You're not unique
I'm not.
either. Because I know some of Hugh Hefner's body paint girls, and they're Catholic converts.
Yeah.
I mean, I kid you, and they still do that, but there's good Catholic girls now. And I mean, because I shepherd through the Catholic converts. I'm Catholic, and I'm with the Beverly Hills Church. But also, I mean, one of the top pornographers, I know his lawyer, and we teach children together.
Right.
And that sort of thing. But I mean, even I can think of my own life. When I do the observant Catholic thing, but I've been a whore, you know, because I worked undercover as a detective and that sort of thing. I play that role and act that role, and you know, I'm there for that sort of job. But then, and for that matter, I've even allowed my body to be used by drug dealers and stuff to get a bust. But it's extremely compartmentalized,
Yeah.
and I don't do it anymore. I'm too old now. I don't do that sort of thing anymore either. But I used to live that life, you know, very observant Catholic, and then there'd be that wild, you know, oh, time to be another tramp again, and do my detective assignment or something like that. So I'm just saying that the extremes, you know, the virgin whore thing, or the observant Jew writing about the pornography, or the body paint girl versus the new Catholic convert. It's around. I see it very frequently.
And what struck me about my emotional reactions to these expulsions was that they were identical to a woman breaking up with me or to getting fired from a job. It's like it all felt the same, because what would happen, it was like I was re-traumatized in that childhood wound, and it was like turning on this fan on all my emotional baggage, and it just got all stirred up.
But intellectually, you certainly understand that they were all rejections. I don't want to use this word judgmentally. Rejections are failures of a different level of different things. I mean, you
Yeah.
realize that.
Yeah.
You're just saying that now
They
you look-
felt the
emotionally
same.
they're all
They
the same.
emotionally felt the same. And I went back to being 4 years old. In every instant, I felt 4 years old and just like a pathetic little needy boy. That's what struck me, when all these different things, from a woman breaking up with me to a woman just going silent on me, to losing a job, to getting kicked out of the synagogue. It all feels the same.
Lady, what would it be like if you met a woman that would be there for you in a way that would mother you, you know, like it would hold you when you go through that emotion, that you could tell her this is what I'm feeling, and that she would give you love at the time? What do you think that would feel like?
Well, I've had relationships like that, and this is just what's going through my mind, so I won't try to explain it. There's something really exciting about living on the edge of being abandoned. It's just something really exciting. I'm attracted to cruel women, and I'm attracted to danger of abandonment, and there's just something really intoxicating and exciting about it, because I know how horrible it feels when it happens.
All right, but what's the downside?
The downside is that it makes for chaos, and you can't build a life,
And when do you
because you're not in the present moment. because I'm freaking out about the possibility. So you can't build it. Say you get to where I am, I'm almost 47 and haven't built anything. But some blog posts. So
I'm just saying, I mean, I'm just curious, what's the purpose of this even for you?
oh, I just want to workshop some material and then use it to write about and maybe develop a 45-minute talk on the topic. I do a lot of 12-step speaking. I go to my 12-step groups and I often speak on these themes, trying to find some recovery from.
I'm just wondering with the 12th step is that, I mean, the concept there seems to be that, I'm the victim and we share all together that we're all victims. It doesn't lead to something more than that. It doesn't lead to getting away from it.
Have you spent time in 12-step programs?
I, as a therapist, had to go to 12-step programs, so I visited like 3 or 4 times.
Okay, so that's not my experience that we're victims. It's my experience of it is that they like to use the term we have a disease. So I go for like emotional addiction, 12-step, I haven't gone to AA or Narcotics Anonymous. But so they use the term disease, and so I'm trying to think, as a victim, it's people trying to get healthy. Like half the people are just absolutely distraught. When I go to a 12-step meeting, they're just really broken up. And
to me, using the word disease, it's almost synonymous. It's like, well, I got a disease, what the hell can I do? What I'm trying to point out to you is that at any moment in your life, you have, or you're creating the image of God means that you have free choice. Maybe a damn effing hard choice. But the moment that you choose for the rest of your life to always act as the adult part of yourself and not the abandoned child, you have that. Maybe welling up, but the moment you decide that just like I did it over there, so I can do it over here, what's a motivation, for example, like when I deal with couples, is I join with the guy, for example, who's shitting on his wife, and you're being the biggest a-hole when you just do this, and he recognizes that and wants to stop. So he has a strong motivation to want to stop. If you're not in any relationship, but you keep going about, well, I got this disease, and you want to explain, you want to feel it, I don't know what the motivation could be, but unless...
Well, if you're in a 12-step program, it means you want to change. No one goes there to get support for their addiction.
Yeah, but you say you've been there for how many years?
I've been there for 2 years, and it's made a huge difference. It hasn't made a difference in my emotional reaction to the feeling of abandonment. But great to see you. Be well. Be well. That has made a huge difference in that I no longer use pornography.
Wow, that's a huge thing.
Yeah. And no masturbation in 10 months. Zero, zilch, no masturbation. So that transforms my life, because it's embarrassing to say this, but I'd say the highlight of my day for most of my life since I was 16 has been those 10 minutes of masturbation. And so what I would do is I'd go through the day collecting scenarios that I'd use for my masturbatory fantasies, and that kind of interfered with the way I related to women in particular. So now I can no longer use scenarios because I don't masturbate anymore. It's changing the way I relate to people. And it would also reinforce my eroticized rage, because my masturbatory fantasies are pretty cruel. And so every time I would use them, I'd get the endorphin high of acting out a cruel scenario, and it would just imprint that cruelty and anger all the more deeply. So through my 12-step, I've been able to let go of porn, let go of masturbation, which is transforming the way I relate to people, and I'm able to slowly start letting go of some of the rage, which even if you don't express it, say more extreme expression of eroticized rage is rape, or molesting someone. But even if you only express your eroticized rage in completely consensual, socially acceptable ways, it means it comes out in role-playing games where you're pursuing intensity rather than intimacy, and it comes out in humor. So I have a very cruel sense of humor, and that's how my rage would express itself. And so by working the 12-step and doing a complete moral inventory of everyone that I'm enraged at and resent, and starting to see why I resent them, what role I played, and then turning it over to God, because those people deserve the same understanding that I want for myself. I'm able to get a little bit of freedom from the resentment and anger that's been driving me